first kaiju made land in San Francisco. The second attack hit Manila. And then the third one hit Cabo. And then we learned this was not gonna stop. In order to fight monsters, we created monsters of our own.
Hey everyone, I'm back with another vlog, this time for Pacific Rim, which is a movie I've been looking forward to for quite some time. Big robots against big monsters. Not much more I need to say, but I'll give you a quick rundown of the plot anyway, even though the plot is really just a backdrop for the action. But in any case, sometime in the not-too-distant future, next Sunday AD, some kind of a dimensional gateway opens up out in the Pacific Ocean, and these giant robots start coming through. So the governments of the world pool their resources together to create these giant robots, which they call Jaegers, which is the German word for hunter, in order to stop the giant monsters, which they call the kaiju. Most of the movie actually takes place a good 6 or 7 years or so after the gateway opens up. So you don't really see much of the beginning of the war except for like the first 15 minutes of the movie where they have the prologue. Most of it takes place actually towards the end, after we've been fighting this war for several years and we're slowly starting to realize that we're kind of fighting a losing battle because the monsters just keep getting bigger and bigger, and the robots are starting to drop like flies, and all the governments of the world are starting to lose faith in the Jaeger program and are even in the process of trying to get it shut down, and instead are putting their faith in basically building a big-ass wall on the Pacific coast. And after they announce that, in the very next scene, you see a monster just kind of breaking through the wall like it was made of styrofoam. So yeah, that worked well. And even in the face of all that, the politicians are still like, no, this wall, this is going to save us. In spite of overwhelming evidence to the contrary, they are staying the course, which sadly is probably the most realistic thing in this movie. That's kind of depressing. Oh well. Anyway, but yeah, the majority of the movie focuses on basically 3 main characters. There's Raleigh Beckett. Some of these names are kind of weird. Played by Charlie Hunnam. Mako Mori, who is played by Japanese actress Rinko Kikuchi. And their commanding officer, Stacker Pentecost, played by Idris Elba. I'm going to say his name again, Stacker Pentecost. Now, I realize this movie is not really supposed to be taken seriously. It's supposed to be fun. But when your characters have names that even the creative team at WWE would reject as being too hokey, maybe you need to tone it back just a little bit, Guillermo. I'm just saying, you know, back off a little bit. Now, unfortunately, the main characters are kind of a weak point in this movie because while I did like Mako a lot, she was actually a very interesting character. I liked what they did with her backstory and her relationship with Raleigh, who the two of them end up piloting one of the Jaegers together, because the Jaegers require 2 pilots at one time. The way they work is basically they're controlled through kind of a combination of physical moves as well as being like mentally connected through the mind to the robot. But they discovered in the early days of the program that one human mind was, with very few exceptions, not enough to pilot one of these, so they had to combine 2, and the 2 pilots are not just connected to the robot, but also connected to each other. While those 2 get teamed up, and while Mako is a pretty interesting character, I thought, I really liked what they did with her, Raleigh and Stacker both are actually kind of boring and not terribly original either. I mean, Raleigh is pretty much there to constantly buck authority, and Stacker is there to constantly yell at him for bucking authority. Because we haven't seen that shit before. Real original there, guys. But and the story itself is, like I said, it's basically there to be a backdrop for the action. It's, not horribly creative, I have to say. If you've seen any other kind of big monster or big robot story, which is what this movie is basically supposed to be an homage to, then you're not going to see anything new here. But fortunately, it makes up for this in other areas, one being a lot of the side characters, which are very enjoyable. There's a pair of scientists who are working for the Jaeger Project. There's Bern Gorman and Charlie Day. Bern Gorman plays the, very stuck-up, by-the-book type, and so, of course, he's British. And Charlie Day is more of the kind of crazy one of the group. He's very intelligent, but spends the entire movie acting like he's got a permanent IV of caffeine. And I actually like these two characters a lot. They play off each other very well, and there are a lot of funny moments between them. But Charlie Day's character in particular, he is very over the top, but they do it just enough to keep him funny, but not too much so he crosses the line over into annoying. They keep him right at just the right level, I thought. And I really liked what they did with his character. And the other character that I thought was pretty awesome was this black market dealer who basically sells all manner of kaiju body parts. Apparently, ground up kaiju bone powder makes for the equivalent of Viagra or something like that. That's kind of what they implied it to be. Who knew? You grind up Godzilla's bones, and the pun pretty much writes itself, doesn't it? Oh boy. But anyway, but yeah, and this guy whose name is Hannibal Chow, again with the names. That one's not quite as silly as Stacker Pentecost, but, That guy is played by Ron Pearlman, who I actually didn't know was supposed to be in this movie. That was kind of a surprise. I actually went back and watched the trailer again to see if I missed him. Turns out I did, but I can see why I missed him, because he's only in there twice, and each time it's just for a split second. You don't hear him say any lines or anything. He's there and then he's gone. So that's why I missed him. But yeah, he is awesome in this because he's Ron fucking Pearlman. He's awesome in everything. That's just what he does. So yeah, the side characters helped, and the other thing that helped was the action. If you want to have two giant beings battling each other, this is exactly how you need to do it. This looked fantastic, especially on the big screen. I did not see it in 3D, A, because I didn't feel like forking over the extra money for the 3D surcharge, and B, because the theater closest to me that was showing this movie was only showing it in 2D for some reason. I guess because they had to make room for Grown Ups 2, which made more money this last weekend than Pacific Rim. How the hell does that happen? It's like, did people not see the first movie? Why? Why? Fucking hell. I hate people sometimes. I really do. But yeah, the action is very well done. It does get a bit ridiculous at times, because this movie, like I said, is an homage. It's basically Guillermo del Toro's love letter to giant monster and big robot stories. And it takes both the good and the bad. You've got, plenty of hard-hitting action that is very creatively done, and some pretty inventive monster designs as well. I really like what they did with those. But you also have some sillier aspects. Like, for example, if you've ever seen pretty much any episode of Power Rangers, they always have that one big badass weapon that could easily destroy the monster in one shot, but they have to spend 10 minutes punching the damn thing in the face before they realize this isn't working, and then they bring out the big weapon and boom, there it goes. There's a bit of that in here too, so, but it's accurate, for better or worse. Guillermo knows what he's doing. It pays tribute very well. And actually, another very silly moment during a fight between the robot that Mako and Raleigh are piloting, what was it called? The Gypsy Danger, I think was the name of it. While they're fighting a kaiju in the streets of Hong Kong, there's a point where I think the robot throws a punch and it's deflected and it flies into a nearby building, and you see it just kind of driving through the building in slow motion, and just as it hits the very end of its extension, just the knuckle just lightly nudges a desk on which there's sitting a Newton's cradle, and it just, that light bump gets it to start going back and forth. That was one moment where I was like, okay, Guillermo, get off it. It's like that. I'm sure some people will find that funny. I thought it was kind of stupid. I was like, Guillermo, I'm enjoying your movie so far. Don't blow it. Fortunately, he didn't blow it, because in spite of its flaws, this was actually a pretty fun ride. And the action was very well shot. The characters, while a couple of them were not terribly interesting, at least they weren't annoying. And yeah, overall, it's, not terribly original, not something that should be taken serious, but it's not trying to be any of those things. It's just giving you big robots fighting big monsters. And if that's what you're looking for, this movie will deliver in spades. If you're looking for something with a bit more substance, this probably won't be up your alley. But if you can forgive its faults, you should have fun with this. And that's about all I have to say about Pacific Rim. So yeah, if you are at all interested in seeing this, you should see it on the big screen, because it's definitely worth it just for the spectacle. And also, stick around after the credits. There is a post-credit scene. Not terribly important if you miss it. There's no sequel bait, really. Although it does involve a character that I presume would be around for the sequel, but just, it's there, just so you know. That's about it. Take care.
It is pretty cool.
Pacific Rim.